Hi, this is Jamey, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Honshu. Honshu is a thing that I heard a great deal about and great things about on a number of podcasts that discuss the recent BGG Con in Texas. I heard so many great things about it that I had to get a copy, so I went to Game Surplus. I looked all over. I couldn't find it anywhere, but Game Surplus had a copy, fortunately, so I got a copy from them. And I want to say one quick thing about them. I ordered it, and shipping was like $12, and I was fine with that. I paid the money, and a few hours later, maybe a few minutes later, it was really fast. They contacted me and said, "Hey, we found that we can ship this to you a little cheaper if we use USPS. We're going to refund you $5 or whatever." And they just did it, and it was awesome. Great customer service. So I just wanted to say that. But Honshu is basically a tile laying game where you're trying to score points. I mean, you're trying to have a giant village that scores points. You're trying to have trees that score points. There are different things that score points. But it doesn't have tiles in it. It has cards. It has the cards that look like this. That have these different shapes on them. And when I first heard about this, when I first heard that there were cards in the game, I was like, oh, well, I mean, cards don't really work all that well in tile games because they end up sliding under one another, and you want tiles because they're thicker, and when you put them against one another on the table, they hit one another. See, even this is hard to do up here. Like you want it to just go, lie flush with one another. And then I read the rules and I played the game and I found out why they're cards, and this ties in with the brilliant mechanism that Honshu offers, and that is in Honshu you are not putting cards side by side. On your turn, when you place a card, because on every turn, 12 turns in the game, you're placing a card, you must either overlap or underlap. Is underlap a word? Overlap, underlap, at least one square. So you could overlap an entire card if you wanted to, or you could do two squares or one square, back or front. That's your choice, but the overlap underlap mechanism here is brilliant because it gives you so much flexibility in terms of what you're doing on with these cards, and so many more interesting choices than if they were just tiles. One of the key elements of this is that, or a couple really. One, these deserts that you can see, they don't score you any points at the end. They don't hurt you, but they don't score any points. And so you're always kind of just free to cover them up if you want. Two, there's certain types of terrains that you're trying to form like a big district of certain terrains. So for example, lakes, if you just have like a single lake somewhere, it scores 0 points. But if you have more lakes next to it, then you get 3 points for every additional lake. And so if I put down this card, I might have other cards around this or nearby, and I wouldn't be able to wedge a card in there if it was side by side. But using this overlap underlap mechanism, I can make that happen. I can fix mistakes that I've made in the past. I can adjust on the fly. In the last game I played, I built kind of a village on one side of my board, and then I had some cards that were going out one other way, and I ended up having like a pretty decent sized village over here. And normally in a tile placement game, it would be really hard because you only get to score your biggest village. It would be really hard to connect those two villages. But in Honshu, I was able to use that overlap underlap mechanism to pretty quickly and easily work my way from village A over to village B and connect them into a mega village that scored me a bunch of points. This is just a really satisfying, really creative mechanism that thinks outside of the box. Because until I played this game, the way I thought about tile laying games was that it had to be tiles because tiles, that's what a tile laying game is. But that wouldn't work. This overlap underlap mechanism would not work with tiles because they're not flexible enough. But with cards, it works perfectly and beautifully, and I really, really like it. So I'm wondering, I mean, if you played Honshu, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, if you have a favorite mechanism in the game, or if you have a favorite mechanism in a tile laying game you want to talk about, or if you have a game where, I mean, Honshu is basically a case of me having an idea of what a certain category of mechanisms needed to be to work, and then this flipped it on its head and opened me up to a whole new realm of ways that tile laying games can work, and why cards are actually better than tiles in this game. So if you have an example of that in a game where it just really opened your mind up to a way a whole genre of mechanisms could work, I'd love to hear that as well. Thanks.